With interest rates continuing to fluctuate and houses selling for thousands over asking price, continuing to rent might make a lot of sense. But there's a lot to consider before jumping into the commitment of a lease. Let's talk about what you need to know before renting a property. Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Nikita. So there's this ease of access when renting that isn't necessarily there when you're getting a mortgage. Still, there are a few points you'll want to keep in mind when you rent. For starters, you'll want to know your credit score. If you have any concerning items on your credit report, you'll want to know those in advance. That way, you're prepared to address them when your potential landlord brings them up. Most landlords will check a new applicant's credit history, which could make a big difference in your next apartment search. There are many resources available to property owners for running a potential tenant's credit, from landlord associations to going directly through credit bureaus. While the specifics of what credit criteria is needed will vary from landlord to landlord, most won't necessarily be expecting perfect credit. But there are a few things that may make it more difficult to be approved. Concerns like repossessed vehicles or credit cards charged off may suggest to a landlord that a potential tenant has trouble managing their finances. Along with checking your credit, most potential landlords will also require proof of income and a background check. The requirements, again, can vary, but some things a landlord might look into are: 1, do you make an income that is at least X times the monthly rent? Landlords get antsy when they see a potential tenant living paycheck to paycheck, because 1 month of unexpected expense for you could mean they don't receive rent that month. 2, do you have a responsible rental history? Landlords may check in with your previous landlords to find out if you paid on time, damaged the unit, or were a disorderly tenant. They also might look into possible evictions or other areas of concern in your rental history. Ultimately, the goal of the credit, income, and background checks are to help a landlord determine if an applicant will be a reliable tenant. If you have areas a landlord might be concerned about, they don't necessarily mean that you'll automatically be denied. Some landlords are more flexible than others, but be prepared to address the issues by paying a higher deposit or offering to add a guarantor with good credit history to the lease. And once you do sign a lease, you can potentially use the rent payments as a way to build up your credit. Sites like Rent Reporters and Rental Karma are a couple of options for reporting these payments. The next thing to determine when starting your rental journey is how much you can truly afford to pay in rent. What you can afford depends on your income and other expenses like debt payments and groceries. There are a few ways to tackle determining what you can afford. One popular way is the 30% rule, where you'd spend about 30% of your gross income on rent. So let's pretend you make $9,000 monthly before taxes. You should spend no more than $2,700 monthly in rent under this rule. But even at $9,000 monthly, this rule can prove challenging in pricier markets like New York City, where the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment can run nearly $3,900. So in this case, you may want to consider using the 50-30-20 budget as a guide to help you figure out how much you can afford to pay monthly in rent. This method allocates your post-tax take-home pay into 3 sections: 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and additional debt payments. Okay, math time again. Let's use our $9,000 monthly income example from before. $4,500 of that would be allocated for needs like rent, utilities, and groceries. $2,700 would be allocated to cover wants like shopping and entertainment, and $1,800 would go to your savings and paying down debts. Are y'all still with me? Yeah? Okay, good. Well, while we're on the subject of monthly expenses, we should go ahead and talk about renter's insurance. I know, it's not the most exciting part about moving, but it is something you'll want to consider when renting your next place. And a lot of landlords will actually require at least a liability policy. And you know what is exciting? Having protection for your stuff. So this is definitely an expense you should factor into your monthly budget. If your potential landlord doesn't require it and you're on the fence about whether to purchase a policy, consider these 3 factors. 1, your landlord's insurance won't cover you if something happens. In most cases, a landlord's insurance will only cover the structure of the building. This doesn't protect your personal belongings, nor does it cover you if you accidentally flood your neighbor's apartment or cause other damage. 2, chances are you own more than you think. Maybe you're thinking that you don't have anything valuable that would be pricey to replace. But when you start to add up all the expenses of everything in your home, the electronics, the furniture, the clothes, the shoes, the whatever, it can really add up. Replacing an entire home worth of stuff can quickly jump to the tens of thousands of dollars mark. Also keep in mind that renter's insurance may cover some of your stuff when you're not at home. Like if your laptop was stolen on the subway, your policy may cover you. 3, and finally, renter's insurance could protect your finances. If you do someday hope to save for a down payment on a home or other large purchase, shelving out thousands of dollars to fix damage you caused in a rental or to replace a stolen entertainment system could really eat into your savings. You'd probably be surprised to learn how affordable renters insurance actually is, too. The team at NerdWallet analyzed renters insurance rates across the U.S. and determined that the average cost is only about $179 per year or $15 per month. Pricing can be higher or lower depending on where you live, but it probably costs less than you think. The next thing to consider is the property type itself. Do you want to live in a big, corporate-owned community, or would you prefer to rent a home directly from the owner? There are a few advantages and disadvantages to both. If you're renting from a large corporation, chances are you won't have to compete for an apartment if you are the first applicant. Larger corporations typically lease an apartment to the first qualified applicant. The downside to a large property management company is that they might not be as flexible with some of the income or credit guidelines. If you have a lower income or credit issues, it may be harder to get approved by a company that has their own corporate guidelines and policies regulating their approval processes. If you opt to rent with a private property owner, you'll likely get more flexibility here. They may be more willing to consider overlooking some credit or income concerns if you pay a higher deposit. The downside to renting from a private owner is that you may have more competition for securing the rental. Private landlords may wait until they have several applicants and then choose their favorite from there. Also, when considering your property type, make sure you look at the amenities and lease inclusions that most matter to you. Do you need AC, laundry, flexible lease terms? What are the rules about pets, parties, or overnight guests? All of these things need to be taken into consideration so that you can make an informed decision before signing onto a year-long lease. Speaking of year-long leases, check that too. Are you certain that you want to stick around for at least the next few years? You may be able to talk to your prospective landlord to get down the rent a little bit if you sign onto a multi-year-long lease. It'll save the landlord from potentially needing to do cleaning and marketing of the space, and it would save you a few dollars in the long run. Deciding whether it's a smarter money move to buy or rent has been challenging Americans for years. Saving up for a down payment takes time, and for a lot of people, the ease of access and flexibility of renting makes sense. Everyone's situation is different, but in general, some of the pros of renting is that it could be more affordable, particularly in pricier markets like LA and NYC. It also offers more flexibility to leave town when your lease is up if you'd like. And of course, not having to handle your own maintenance, lawn care, etc. can be a huge draw. For a lot of people, renting may be the easiest option when choosing a place to live. If renting makes sense for you, go in prepared just as you would with any other financial decision. Know what you can afford, know your credit score, and know what you are looking for in a space. If renting is a temporary plan for you, take that into consideration when choosing your lease and space. If you want something that you can live in for the next several years, plan for that as well. I've rented all across the US and have definitely toured some crazy rentals, but the strangest was probably touring an old apartment that had the toilet and shower in one little space on one end of the apartment and the sink inside of one of the bedrooms. So you couldn't wash your hands after using the bathroom unless you went either into your own room or, depending on how you had it set up, your roommate's room. So weird.